Our study is taken from Numbers or Bemidbar, chapter 29. And in the seventh new moon, on the first day of the new moon, you have a set apart gathering. You do no servile work. It is Yom Teruah for you. And you shall prepare an offering as a sweet fragrance to Yahweh. 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones. And their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, and 1 male goat as a sin offering to make atonement for you, besides the ascending offering with its grain offering for the new moon, the continual ascending offering with its grain offering and their drink offerings, according to their right ruling, as a sweet fragrance, an offering made by fire to Yahweh. And on the 10th day of the 7th new moon, you have a set apart gathering, and you shall afflict your beings. You do no servile work. And you shall bring near an ascending offering to Yahweh, a sweet fragrance, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones they are for you. And their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the 1 ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, 1 male goat as a sin offering, besides the sin offering for atonement, the continual ascending offering with its grain offering and their drink offerings. And on the 15th day of the 7th new moon, you have a set apart gathering. You do no servile work. And you shall celebrate a festival to Yahweh 7 days. And you shall bring near an ascending offering, an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Yahweh, 13 young bulls, 2 rams, 13 lambs, 14 lambs, a year old, perfect ones they are. And their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 for each of the 2 rams, and 1/10 for each of the 14 lambs, and 1 male goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the 2nd day, 12 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams and for the lambs, by their number according to the right ruling, and 1 male goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering, with its grain offering and their drink offerings. And on the 3rd day, 11 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number, according to the right ruling. And 1 goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the 4th day, 10 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the right ruling, and 1 male goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the 5th day, 9 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number, according to the right ruling. And 1 goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the 6th day, 8 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, and perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number, according to the right ruling. And 1 goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the 7th day, 7 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering, and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number, according to the right ruling, and one goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. On the 8th day, you have an assembly. You do no servile work. And you shall bring near an ascending offering, an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Yahweh. One bull, one ram, 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones. Their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bull, for the ram, and for the lambs, by their number, according to the right ruling. And one goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then you prepare to Yahweh at your These you prepare to Yahweh at your appointed times, besides your vowed offerings and your voluntary offerings, as your ascending offerings and your grain offerings, as your drink offerings and your peace offerings. And Moshe spoke to the children of Israel according to all Yahweh had commanded Moshe. Praise Yahweh. Chapter 29. Bemidbar chapter 29 has 40 verses. These verses have been dedicated to giving the template of how to conduct the latter festivals. We spoke last week on how Yahweh blessed the house of Israel, the works of their hands so abundantly that they would be able to produce and provide continual sacrifices without ever running out. Blessed with knowledge to achieve top-tier farming results, as so did Jacob did with Laban, when he was with Laban. Chapter 29 describes how we should celebrate and keep the latter festivals. Because our master, Yahushua, was not born yet, the children of Israel had to use clean animals, a large quantity of AAA grade, perfect choice animals to use as an example of what the master was coming to do later in history. In celebrating Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Hag Sukkot, there is a standard template of sacrifices that's used in the service. We see this in verses 1 through 5 being used as a standard procedure before any other sacrifices were done. The 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs, 1 goat, and the grain offering and the ascending offering. And if we see that the only thing offered on Yom Kippur, and if we see that was the only thing offered on Yom Kippur, but on Yom Teruah, the standard was set with the additional new moon offerings of ascending and grain offerings. And we also notice that all the latter festivals commanded an immediate cease of all servile work. So we see just how strict the Levites had to be in knowing their work. They had to know the number of animals and which type of animals to use, how to use them, what grain offerings and drink offerings they mix with, and how to mix them, prepare them, and clean the dishes that they use for them. The Levites honestly didn't have all the time for mundane work. There was consistent dedication in making sure that they weren't the reason Israel was cursed, and that Israel wouldn't become a curse to itself through disobedience. On Hag Sukkot, I really found it interesting because I've never seen Yahweh choose a number 13 before, an odd number. With no connection to Israel, why the number 13? Because it was a countdown to perfection. See, every day for the 7 days of Hag Sukkot, the children of Israel would slaughter 13 bulls, 12 rams, 14 lambs, with the grain offering and sin offerings. And with each day passing, they would shorten the number of bulls, almost like an anticipation of greatness or something to look forward to. So every day from day 1, you are celebrating and worshiping Elohim until you reach day 7, and at the climax of perfection, with 7 bulls, double the lambs, so not just 7 but 14 lambs, such a powerful symbolism, we worship and celebrate the event of Yahweh tabernacling with us. And at the end, we close all our festivals with a set-apart gathering on the 8th day, which would be Shimni Haaretz, which commanded again no servile work. And its template of offerings are similar to that of Yom Kippur: 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs, and the grain offerings, and the sin offerings, and 1 goat, and the 1 goat as a sin offering, besides the sin offering for atonement and the continual ascending grain and drink offerings. This was the template that our ancestors used for years while waiting for the shepherd. And Yahweh commanded us, and see, he encourages the people to voluntarily give, because he knows there's no need for you to give, especially when the Levites are doing their job and the abundance in animals. There's no need. But for us to feel a part of the service, a part of the worship, for us to have the feelings and the choice to actually give or not to give, but the choice to give to the Lord on these set apart and holy days, he didn't take it away from us. He could have said, just come and celebrate and worship. But some people and followers never want to come to Yahweh empty-handed. So he made sure make a way that we can receive his attention in even a deeper way by voluntarily offering praise and worship and offerings. I really liked how after all these instructions, the call to those whose hearts to give was not forgotten, but encouraged. Our ancestors did all these because Master Yahshua had not yet come. To imitate to a level his perfection, every sacrifice that was mentioned was needed. It shows the extent of what our shepherd went through and what he did for our behalf. This is the summary for chapter 29 of Bemidbar. I open the floor for comments and questions.
All right, shalom. Very good, very good. Shimas Aaron. The thing about it is, even though it's 40 verses, everything you said encapsulated all 40 verses. And what's striking is what Yah has for the Yara today is a piggyback on chapters 28 and 29. So I started listening to you and really relishing in the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, how he coordinates for his purpose. What you said was very important, and I do pray that everybody did receive the fact that all of these sacrifices Yahweh would do. Yahweh made sure that it never left the minds and the hearts of those whom he had chosen what he had planned for complete, final, and permanent restoration of all things. And that is what the good news is. Yahweh will restore all things. Adon Yahusha is the agent of the good news through whom Yahweh restores all things. And all of the Moedim are appointed times in which he acts, not the sacrifices anymore, but he acts. He does the work that those sacrifices on those days would have done in a more realistic fashion, because they were only teaching us of what he would do. So it's very important to understand that. And it's amazing because I have to say a lot of the same things over in the Yara to actually bring to show exactly what you're saying, and that everything was about Adon Yahusha and redemption and restoration. And we cannot appreciate what he has done for us and what we have from him until we understand the work he has done and the plan that Yah had to restore all things. And this plan of restoration is locked in the Moedim. These offerings that he asked just to clarify, these offerings coming here did not really come, they did not come from the people. The priests and the Levites would have had their own quadrant of these sacrifices, and they would have utilized that. What you are correct in is that the people who came, they never came empty-handed. They came rejoicing with voluntary offerings, vows, and gifts to Yahweh, just rejoicing in Him. When we get into the Yarrow, I don't want to jump ahead, but when we get into the Yarrow, we're going to see that there's a reason why Yah is actually speaking to us prophetically, even in the Moedim. But let me just stick to what you did here. And I like how you pointed out the fact, and please, anybody with a question or comment can come in at any time. Right, Shamash?
Right, correct.
Okay. Notice that in these sacrifices, that was pointed out last night when last week, sorry, when Shaw Denzel did chapter 28, that each one is actually being done on a moed, and they have to actually accompany what is prescribed for every day. For instance, there's a morning and an evening sacrifice every day. On the Shabbat, there's the morning, evening sacrifices and sacrifices for Shabbat. On the new moon, there is the morning sacrifices plus all of the sacrifices that are required for the new moon. And so with all of these in the Moedim, both in the spring and in the fall, because 28 was the spring, the appointed times that happen in the early part of the year. And then we have in chapter 29, all of the Moedim appointed times that occur in the fall of the year, showing two different periods, spring and fall. And 29, and during the fall, we start with first Yom Teruah, which is a new moon service and an appointed time. And what was required was the daily sacrifice, morning and evening. That's 2 goats. Then you had the new moon sacrifice that you would have to do, which we went over last week. And then in addition to that, you would have to add now the sacrifices for Yom Teruah. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, you had the morning sacrifice and the evening sacrifices. Then you had all of the other sacrifices accompanying it, including the sacrifice, the sin offering, which was not 1 goat, but rather 2 goats, both being sin offerings, and both doing the work to show what Master Yahushua would do by himself. So they couldn't just explain what he would do, and every single sacrifice shows an aspect of his work on our behalf, and helps us to understand that Yahweh has itemized for us every way of approach, and every door that was closed to us, Adon Yahushua opened to us. And that is a prelude into the Yara. Are there any questions for Shamash Aaron concerning chapter 29? The floor is open, everybody. Any comments, any questions? Please feel free. Do not be apprehensive about asking your questions. This is the Torah study, the Torah. This is where we expand and explain.
Well, if no one got anything to say, I'll just jump in with this one.
Go right ahead.
Well, you could obviously see why the Levites really didn't have any other jobs, so they did. But their main job was to be the priest and service Elohim, and you see how big the title or how heavy the title is, because every Levite was a master butcherman. And like, if you look at oxen and bulls today are like, you got the biggest ones are like 2,000 pounds. So imagine how big they were back then. So you have people in Mexico dancing and dodging bulls, right? You know what I mean? But you got the real people, you got the real Levites right there slaughtering bulls on the daily. Man,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine that?
Mhm.
Praise Yahweh and Shalom. That was a great
Shalom.
Torah study. Well, not great Torah study, great insight for the chapter. What I was going to say was, do you think that there was actually multiple roles given to different people inside the Levites? So you don't have just everyone being butchers, but you have some people specializing as butchers, and then some people specializing as different things that they would have probably had to do. Or did everyone just have to know everything that consisted of the role?
That's a good question.
Very good question. That's a very good question.
You know what? I think when it comes to the most general things, everyone knew the general things, but because there was almost the Levite tribe was so big, there was so much branches, they could even have breaking it down to everyone having a specific role. There are officers here, there are people who teach here, there are those who there are different I won't say sects, but branches in there. But they also talk about, in the scripture about there's a rotation, a certain rotation that they have, so that one group of Levites don't just wear themselves out. So there's a rotation that happens, a really complex mechanism of rotation that happens for such a large tribe. And I think that's how they work. So I think everyone knew what to do because there was a standard template, and it just that everyone had their certain times to do it. So you had certain people who butchered on this time who did handle the sin offerings. The next group who did the sin offerings for maybe the next week or the next month was a different set, but almost might have been details to where the same people who did the sin offerings wouldn't have been the same people doing the ascending offerings. You know what I mean? So everyone might have a role and someone to rotate with, and that's what we continual. That's that's how I look at it. But Cohen Aria, what you think?
Actually, you're right. And even further than that, first of all, we have to distinguish between the Kohanim and the Levites. The Kohanim had specific roles that was given specifically to them that the Levites were not supposed to do. Secondly, the Levites remember, when we did the earlier Torah study, the Levites were actually given to the Kohanim to assist the Kohanim in the works that they could actually address. And it would have been assisting in the slaughtering, because there is examples in scripture where the Levites had to come to the aid and assist in the slaughterings, but it would rather be the priests that was actually doing the slaughterings, in this case, the Kohanim. And King David, actually did do exactly as you said. He divided the priesthood into what he called courses. And I think there were 24 courses in total. 24 courses in total, and that would be rotations of service. And we get this example from, for instance, in the Brit Hadash, in the Renewed Covenant, when we look into Zechariah, Yochanan the Immerser's father, who was serving his course in the Hekal, and his course included lighting the menorah in the most set apart place. And the course that he was actually engaged in was the very course that David had established more than 1,000 years earlier. And they would have specific things that they would do in their course. And then after they've served in that course, then they actually go to their residence and they do manual work in their residence and until their course comes up again. Even though they did not have their own personal property, there was properties allotted to the priests and the Levites. And those would be cities of refuge where they would have their open fields for sheep that they would actually be keeping even outside of what was going on in the Hechal, in the temple. So you had a well-organized structure and a rotation to do the things that was needed. And all of them would have gathered at the appointed times. And everything was organized so that everybody had something to do without conflict. So yes. God Eliyahu has his hand raised. Shamash.
Lekan?
Yes, thank you very much. Again, very good presentation, simple, straight to the point. But there's a thought that is going through my mind. And before I share it, I just want to confirm what you would have said when you mentioned the number 13. I don't quite remember exactly what you said. So if you can just repeat for us what you said when you mentioned the number 13.
Yep, just 1 second. Ah, okay. I said on Haxukot, I really found it interesting because I've never seen Yahweh choose the number 13, our number, with no connection to Israel, his plans. Why the number 13? Because, shall I continue or was that all?
Yeah, continue.
Because it was the countdown to perfection. See, every day for the 7 days of Haxukot, the children of Israel would slaughter 13 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs, with the grain offering and sin offerings. And with each day passing, they would shorten the number of bulls down, almost like an anticipation to greatness or something to look forward to. So every day.
Yes, okay, I got it. And we got down to day 7, where we had exactly 7 bulls. But still the same 2 rams and 14 lambs. But then look at what happens on day 8. I don't think you connected day 8 to it. Because on day 8, that was down in verse 36. Yes. Well, it's actually in verse 36. You notice that the number dropped completely for the bulls from 7 to 1. And the rams also went to 1. And then the lambs went to 7. I was wondering if there was significance in that, because it is the 8th day, which is renewal. And then you have just 1 bull, 1 ram, and 7 perfect lambs. I'm just wondering if there's any way we can get meaning from that.
Oh, yes.
I was just thinking of what I was thinking, but I know Kohan, you have something to say. I actually was thinking about what you said just now as well, and it really is interesting. I just want to confirm one thing first. Is the 8th day renewal or complete? I thought it was completion, or is it renewal?
Well, but my understanding is it's renewal in the sense that take the weekly cycle, for example. You have day 1 to 7. Yahweh rested, completed his work, gave us the Shabbat. And then the cycle starts over on day 8, which is really day 1. So that's what I was kind of looking at when I said renewal. Starting the cycle over. I don't know if I'm correct, but Cohen can guide us there.
Yeah. Just before we get sure I have some, I just like the dive in, Elder Cardi. I like that dive in and that recognition, because those are the things that we should that we actually should be studying in this to make application for what Adon Yahushua has done. Yes, the 8th day is not necessarily a day of renewal, but actually the day of eternity. The 7th day is when everything is completed to perfection. And the 8th day represents days without end. So it's a type of renewal, but it's an everlasting thing. It is to be perfect in eternity. That is what the 8th day represents. Okay, for instance, the seventh Hag Sukkot represents the millennial reign of Messiah, the 1,000-year reign. That 1,000-year reign will exist until Adon Yahushua will reign on the throne of David on earth from Jerusalem with those who was resurrected at the Natsal for 1,000 years. At the end of that 1,000 years, which represents Hag Sukkot, you have the Shemini Atzeret. That 1,000 years is referred to as the Atid Labo, the age to come, the Messianic age. But the 8-day Shemini Atzeret represents the day eternal. After Yah has completely eradicated all evil, everything is already renewed and restored. The 8-day represents a beginning of time without end, eternity. It represents a time when we will be eternally immortal, perfect, living forever in the presence of Yahweh. Whereas the seventh, the 7-day celebration of Hag Sukkot represents our 1,000-year reign on earth with Adon Yahushua. The 8-day represents the eternity, creation completely restored. So that's the prophetic meaning of those two. Yes, the 8-day is, and that's the reason why there's an offering of 7. First of all, the offerings on that day is different from the offerings on Hag Sukkot, because even though it is a closing festival attached to Hag Sukkot, because Hag Sukkot ends on day 7, and a new day comes, and a different celebration occurs. Yet they're still connected, because at sunset on the last day of Hag Sukkot, you move straight into the beginning of Shemini Atzeret. Shows the connection, showing us that we will move straight from the final judgment at the end of the 1,000-year reign straight into eternity and eternal life. This is the prophetic insight into the Moedim and even into the sacrifices, whereas on that day, that will be an eternally perfect day. So you have an eternally perfect 7. And each one of the sacrifices for each one of these days, the sacrifices themselves represent something in particular. You have, and you can hear it again in the Yara, and it's good that we're having the Yara to reinforce this, but you're going to see that every single sacrifice for sin was specifically to cover sin. The sacrifice for trespass against one another, that was specifically for that. Then you had the Olah, which was the ascending offering, which had nothing really to do with sin, but rather the purpose of it is for atonement, along with Zabak Shalamim, the peace offering, which is also for atonement. It is for right relationship, whereas the other two is to repair relationship. The latter, the Olah and the Zabak Shalamim, the ascending offering and the peace offering, are to maintain a right relationship. So when we look at these sacrifices being offered every day, we see that there are sacrifices for sin, but also sacrifices for right relationship, atonement. And when it comes to the end of time, these sacrifices will well, they have already been superseded. But the understanding of these sacrifices, we will see, is in Adon Yahushua. And I can't wait to get into the Yara. So, Al-Qadi, I hope that clarified about the 8-day. I know I went a little bit further than I should have.
But to some extent, but we could go a little deeper. But I would prefer if you take Sharet Hepzibah first and then come back to me and I add something.
Okay. Sharet Hepzibah.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom Shabbat.
Okay, I put my hand down because I agreed with what you had said, and I was like, I didn't need to say anything else regarding. I looked at the 8th day not so much as a renewal, but eternity. It to me, after thinking of what this represents. Knowing that when the time comes and when this happens, that all of these things that are being done, what it represents, the 8th day will just be eternity. That's why I say I agreed with you, because sin will be no more, correct?
Correct.
So looking at what the sacrifices now, I mean, in this chapter that we're reading, and why it declines, because I was reading the chapter, I was reading like and trying to get into this as well. So I was really glad Dr. Cardi kind of brought it, because I was like, there is something about this. And so, Shimash Aaron, yes, when you reread it and shared that insight with us, and all of the things that are being pulled out right now, I appreciate that insight. Praise Yahweh for the rock moving. But I want to ask, like you said, each of these sacrifices have a particular meaning. So I'm wondering, like Dr. Kali say, why one decline and the next one do? Is it that, and what does the lambs represent? Is it that, and then, so at the 8th day, when it switched, is it that because at the 8th day, what they represented was no longer needed?
Okay. To finish,
Yes.
okay. First of all, what's going on in each of the Moed is a completely different act and event. We have to establish that. Just like the actions of Pesach is different from the actions of Hagamatzah, the actions of Hagamatzah, the event Hagamatzah is different from the event Yom HaNaparomer, the first fruit wave. Also, what is being signified at Yom Teruah is different. What is being signified at Yom Kippur is different. What is signified at Hag Sukkot is different. All of these are aspects of restoration, Yahweh's plan of restoration. What happens on Shemini Atzeret, the 8-day celebration, is also different. Each carry a significant act in the plan of a restoration. And this is why it's important to keep these festivals, because without keeping them, you cannot understand Yah's plan. You'd have to make it up, and that's what's happening in the church world. You have to make up what's happening. But if you study Yah's Moedim, his appointed times, you understand his plans completely. He has led us to understand the sacrifices, because it's very important. Without understanding the sacrifices, we could never appreciate the power and the extent of Master Yahweh's sacrifice. We will see it as one event, and we will not know the extent and import of that one event. Now, when it comes to Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day, and the differences in the sacrifices, all of the sacrifices on each day are different. When I say they're different, yes, they have the morning and the evening sacrifices, but you'd see that the amount of bulls, the amount of lambs are all different. And that's because of the specific event to that moed, to that appointed time. Now, when we come to Shemini Atzeret, what is being offered here? First of all, the bull, the one bull, the 7 lambs, all perfect ones, with their grain offerings, and also the drink offerings for the bull, the ram, and the lambs with the grain offerings. Now, you'd notice that in every one of them, they have one offering for sin. It is necessary that the offering for sin be present so that sin can be eradicated, so that the reconciliation might take place. Reconciliation with Yahweh cannot take place while sin still exists. Sin has to be removed. The level of appreciation is in the sacrifices, in particular, the Olah, because the Olah has always been the most expensive. It is the bull. That is, and the Olah, as the ascending offering, is not consumed. Everything goes to Yahweh. Everything goes to Yahweh. So much so that it is the highest of the offerings, and it brings complete at 1 minute. It means that I can offer this up and it be accepted because Yahweh has accepted me. And that's with the Olah. the Zebach Shalomim, the peace offering, is the same. Not exactly like the Olah to the extent in value, but also the same. It is the sacrifice of Shalom, Zebach Shalom, the sacrifice of peace. And this peace we know is Shalom, because the word peace only covers a portion of Shalom. Shalom extends further than the word peace, which is peace is just a cessation of war. Whereas Shalom encompasses not only cessation of conflict, but rather complete restoration and wholeness. So that our restoration and wholeness is with Yahweh. So these are brought into effect. And on the 8th day, they are present like this because our relationship with Yahweh is completely restored and healed. We are now in the place, sitting in the same position that Adam sat in before he fell. And that's the 8th day and its sacrifices.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps. Elder?
Oh, yes, it does, but I'm still waiting to give my additional piece.
Oh, go ahead then. Sorry. True.
Yes. Coming back to the question I raised earlier and your response, Cohen. If Shamath Aaron could just allow me to continue. Okay, beautiful. Yes, when Cohen, when you responded, and you first said, well, it is not actually a renewal. And then during your presentation, you said it is like a renewal. And the thought hit me, okay, it's not a renewal, but it's like a renewal. Let me try and figure out how it could be more like a renewal than what you were saying. Not that what you were saying is incorrect, but I just wanted in my mind to add to it. Understanding that, okay, the 8th day here should not be synonymous with the first day of a new week. But then we look at the 8th day here, and you notice that the 8th day in this context is a Shabbat, a day of rest, no servile work. And I'm thinking that the Shabbat is also a time of renewal, because we go through a weekly cycle, and on the Shabbat, we worship, we rest, and we are renewed while we are resting. And it directed my mind to 2 verses in Scripture, which I can, in my mind, see as that kind of renewal. The first one is in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 17, where it says, if anyone is in Mashiach, he is a renewed creature. The old have passed away. See, all have become renewed. And so that suggests to me that the past is ended. One is now in a new relationship, so that one becomes a renewed creature. Renewal is taking place. And then that drove me down to Hazan, Revelation 21 and verse 5, which says, and he who was sitting on the throne said, see, I make all new. And he said to me, write, for these words are true and trustworthy. Again, the whole idea of taking the old and making it new. So that kind of drove me to the concept of renewal. But then thinking even further of the concept of that 8th day, it is the end of the feast. In fact, it could be referred to as the last and great day of the feast. Correct, Gwen?
Yes, it is.
Right. And I noted something that Yahushua did in Yohanan chapter 7 and verse 37, because that verse says that, and on the last great day of the festival, Yahushua stood and cried out, saying, If anyone thirsts, let him come to me, and let him who believes in me drink. And that said something to me, that there was a reason then the sacrifices went down and down and down and down until we got to one bull, one ram, perfect 7 lambs. And what that is saying to us is that these animals and these sacrifices and so on are not really what Yahweh requires from us. What he requires is really that one ultimate sacrifice for sin. And that was demonstrated here in his provision of the one sacrifice through his son, Yahushua, our Adon. And that is why Yahushua said, if you thirst, come to me and drink. So it's not about the sacrifices anymore. So that 8th day, you could say, came in a way when Yahushua's sacrifice was made. But then it also is coming in another day, on that great day, when we are ushered from this old world into eternity, from the old life into that new eternal life. So the whole concept of the renewal, in my mind, is there, and I can see the permanence of it, Cohen, as you mentioned, eternity. But it starts, it would seem to me, with our relationship with Yahweh, with Yahushua. When we accept that sacrifice, and he now brings us into the relationship with his Father, the renewal begins. But then it crescendos on that great day when that last trumpet blows and he bursts the eastern sky. Oh, what a day. That's what the hymn says. What a day. Glorious day that will be. I hope to be, well, I was going to say I hope to be awake when it happens, but I just might die before. So let me correct it and say, I hope to be there to see him when he comes. Because even if I went to the grave before, the word says that the graves will be opened, and in that first resurrection, all eyes will be able to see him. Praise him. It just gives me a glorious feeling. I just had to share that one.
Shimash, can I go on that? Because there's some things that I want to point out because I enjoyed it and I like it very much. But I just want to fine tune some things right here. Okay. And that is, you'd notice from the time, from chapter 28, there's only one sin offering. No matter how much animals involve the other aspects, there's only one sin offering, one goat as a sin offering. And that's for cleansing of sin. The others have specific. When it comes to the 8th day, the reason why I said that it's like a renewal, because the 7th day represents the culmination of perfection. Everything is perfected on the 7th day. Because there's no other way to express eternity in that perfect state, the 8th day is given. And it's not that there'll be a 9th day, because one of the theological foundations that the Catholic Church used to establish Sunday, there was a writer in the 2nd century named that labeled his work Barnabas, that said that the 8th day represented the first day, and the first day, the 8th day. That's why they say the 8th day is Sunday, and that's why you should worship on the new day. And that's the theology of Catholicism going back to the started in the 2nd century, not meaning that, but the 3rd and the 4th century, they definitely attach that meaning to it. But the 8th day itself represents a completely new era. That's why it's not considered an age. There might be different ages when I say age, I mean period of time. For instance, 1,000 years, because 1,000 years is an age. So we have 7 ages, each having 1,000 years. But when we come to the 8 day, we have something separate and apart, something that is distinct in itself, something that takes us out of time altogether and puts us in an eternal place. However, in coming out of time, we're coming out of time in a perfected state and entering an eternal state. And that is what the 8 day represents. That's why I said it's like renewal, because we have to be renewed to perfection before we can come out of it and come to the 8 day. I also want to mention too that the last trump will not necessarily be on the 8th day, but it'll be at the beginning of the beginning of Hag Sukkot. It'll be at the beginning. It'll herald the establishment of the 1,000-year reign. So the last trumpet will come at the beginning of the 1,000 years. At the end of the 1,000 years is when the eternal fire will be displayed in the final judgment. And in chapter 21 of Hazon that Zakan read, that is the 8 day, the establishment of the 8 day. It is the eternal perfect state. That's why Yah says in proclaiming, after the 7th day, I have made everything new. And that newness came out of the 7th day and will last forever. I like the fact that we are diving deeper, because there is so much in it that should be understood. The reason why Yahweh gave it to us is so that we can understand it. And for a long time, these things have been despised, looked at, say, oh, these are done away with. Not realizing that if you don't understand, first of all, what sin is and what is required as penalty for sin, how can you say you're forgiven from sin? It puts you in a state of keeping sinning, of sinning always. But once you understand what Adon Yahusha encompassed in each one of these, not only the sin offering, but also the offerings of atonement, we cannot appreciate, nor could we understand exactly what the plan is. So I am very happy for the contributions, especially from that was brought out, Zakan Eliyahu, and in the Torah study, Shamash Aaron, and also thank Shard Hepzibah for that input. But these fall festivals that we're talking about all represent coming of Messiah, all represents the second coming. And we're going to get into that some more in a few minutes. Praise Yahweh. Back to you, Shamash.
Does anybody have any more comments or questions?
Okay.
There was one more thing I wanted to say before I bring this Torah well, the ending of the Torah study was, if you notice that on the eighth day, yes, it is the 7th day does represent perfection. And when I was actually writing this, I don't know what came to me, but inspired me was completion, which can be completion in the achievement, that what was achieved was perfection. So if you notice that, and it's almost like this whole verses 20, the whole chapter 29 is almost it's almost like a musical symphony, because it shows it shows Yom what Yom Teruah is for, which is celebrate the Feast of Trumpets, if I'm correct, and celebrating. And then Yom Kippur, and then on Yom Kippur, which is more of a solemn festival where we actually afflict our beings. So there's different moods to each one of these. But when we get to Hag Sukkot, it's a celebration of Yahweh tabernacling with us, and it's we actually see the examples of him tabernacling with us in the different stories of when they build the booths and whatnot. But it's the raw blueprint of Yahweh tabernacling with us. So it's almost as if, yes, yeah, and I like how for it, Yahweh says, for the tabernacling, it's almost like a celebration. So you see that the amount of bulls was so much. So it's almost like everyone knows it's a big thing. That's how Yahweh's the Haksukot is a big thing. And we see where it goes with the 13 young bulls, and we see how Cohen talked about how expensive and like the priority of the young bulls are the sending offerings, and then the 14 lambs. So I'll get to the lambs in a bit, but the whole 7 days is almost a celebration of one of a holy rave, but it's a worship,
Kadosh.
a kadosh worship, and between music, prayers, offerings, the voluntary offerings, and what's going on. You have all this going on in the camp, and then it goes on 13, and it goes to 12, 11, all the way down to the seventh day, which is the perfect day. And on the perfect day, you bring a perfect amount of bulls. And why do you bring still the double the lambs? I believe it's because what does the lamb represent? The lamb represents Master Yahshua. One lamb cannot represent Master Yahshua, so it's always been 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones. These 7 lambs represent perfection, and who they represent, which is the ultimate lamb, who was Master Yahshua, the ultimate sacrifice, the perfect sacrifice. So the number 7 there was so powerful, but then on the 7th day, it's double. So you have even like to show how big it was, and that's the culminating day. But then on the 8th day, which is the day of the day of completion, all of the symphony, the entire music is done. You have the last piece, which is the most beautifulest piece. And on that one, you have one bull, one ram. And the thing with this one bull and one ram is like it's one finality, one. And then for 7 lambs that represent who? The one, Master Yahshua. So I took it as even seeing as after this whole combination of partying of 13 young bulls, we now have the culmination that's leading into the culmination, which is putting in the final impression, which is the one bull, one ram, but 7 lambs a year old, representing Master Yahshua, and the one, which is, I think, of finality, final. There's only one chance, there's only one choice, there's only one way. And I really got inspired when I really read how the whole thing went and closed off. That's really all I had to say about that.
Putting the cap on the Torah study. But before we do, I just want to mention something that I want everybody to pay attention to right now. And that is, there is a difference between the weekly Shabbat and the Moedim, all of the Moedim except Yom Kippur. Okay, you'd notice that from 28, well, even all the way from the book of Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 23, that lists the table of the Moedim. Whenever it talks about Pesach, Hagamatza, Yom Hanaparim, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, and Hatsukot, and Shemini Atzeret, Yahweh specifically says no servile work. That type of wording is not present with the weekly Shabbat, neither with the appointment of Yom Kippur. That's because those two are different from the no servile work. On the 7-day Shabbat and on Yom Kippur, there is no work. The adjective there is none, adjective or adverb, no, none. Whereas in the Moedim, it's no servile. There's a difference between the two. And that's expressed even in the names being used. For instance, when it says no servile work, the Hebrew word Shabbaton is used. But when it speaks of Shabbat, For the 7-day Shabbat and Yom Kippur, it says Shabbat, no work. So even though Shabbaton is like a Shabbat, it is not a Shabbat, because in those days you are able to prepare what is needed for your house, whereas on Yom Kippur and on the regular Shabbat, everything should be prepared ahead of time. And there is no work done in those 2 days. It's more than just survival work. Okay, so I want to make that distinction because a lot of people I've spoken to in the past have said that that there's no difference between the two, but there is a difference. There's a difference, and that is what causes the misunderstanding, even in the counting of the Omer, because they say that the first day of unleavened bread is a Shabbat, like the 7-day Shabbat, which it is not. The count for Omer starts there, whereas the scripture is referring specifically to the weekly Shabbat. And it is after that weekly Shabbat that the count should start. So even these little small things we must understand in our return to Hebraism, so that we might know how to proceed according to the word of Yahweh and not according to our own imaginations. And that's why I brought that up. And a lot of what we're talking about, especially when it comes to the Torah and the sacrifices, we do need more discussion on it. But even though the activities are past, the intent of those activities are still very much present and alive. And that is why we need to understand those, okay? So back to you. Thank you for that opportunity.
Praise Yahweh, and thank you, Cohen, especially for the input of the difference between servile work and what's allowed in servile work and what is commanded on Yom Kippur and Yom Shabbat. Is there any other questions or comments? I won't keep it too long. If there isn't any more comments or questions, I give Yahweh praise and thanks for the word and for sending his manna from heaven so that our spirits may eat and we may understand wisdom, knowledge, and the immovable word of the Torah. So with that, let us pray and bow our heads. Praise Yahweh, praise Yahweh, praise Yahweh. For Father Yahweh, there is no one like you, and there is no one like the Master, the great King Moshiach Yahushua. Thank you, Master Yahushua, for showing us how you lived the word and how vital it was for you to come and how vital it is for us to anticipate and continue to wait for your return, and how your living word gives us the power. If we submit to it and obey it, it gives us the power through every year, no matter the day or time, to follow the appointed times of Yahweh. For they shall always, for those who understand them and meet with them, shall especially, they shall be bestowed the reward of life, of heaven, of the true gift of heaven, that cannot be robbed by any robbers, and that cannot be rotten, that can never rot. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word of life, and may we continue to follow your word and anticipate, wait for your coming, wait for you. And as we wait, please continue to open your word for us so that we may know what's happening and what we should do while we wait. Torah Yahweh, praise Yahweh. Thank you, Father Yahweh, for your living word and for the written word. Thank you, Father. B'Shem Master Yahushua. Amen, amen, and amen.
Praise Yahweh.